Overwatch 2 is finally upon us, and with the game's release and the new changes that they've made to the game, this review is going to be broken down into three parts. The first part is going to be game balance, the second part, monetization, the third part will be my final verdict. So let's kick things off with the game balance. If you don't know, Overwatch 2 is played in 5v5, which is different from the 6v6 of the original game. As such, the entire original hero roster had to be looked at and rebalanced for 5v5. Characters such as Kiriko, Sojourn, and Junker Queen are all specifically built for 5v5, so they didn't have that transition that these roster characters do. So with this change from 6v6 to 5v5, the balance overall for the game, for everything but the professional scene, is pretty balanced. It's a pretty balanced state for the general player that's not a pro player. However, there is outliers on either end of the spectrum. So starting with the characters that you should avoid. Characters like Roadhog and Symmetra should be avoided for 99% of the time. Roadhog is good in a very situational scenario with maps such as Ilios Well, where he can hook people into the well. But overall, he did not transition very well. He was a decent off tank at best in the original game. Now, being the only tank, he can't lead a team. His kit is not built for that. So he's not very good. Symmetra, her greatest strength was 2 CP of the original game. That game mode is no longer playable in the main playlists. Because of this, Symmetra has been negatively impacted, and she's too is one of the weakest characters. So some characters that were in decent shape before in Overwatch 1 are no longer playable in Overwatch 2. On top of this, the tank players who used to have a tank buddy and used to partner up, that aspect is gone of this game as well, so you can no longer bubble a charging Rhine. It no longer happens. Then, of course, you have the opposite end of the spectrum of characters that are basically overpowered. Well, we're talking about characters like Genji, characters like Tracer even. These characters in particular, and even Widowmaker, are ridiculously strong in 5v5. Widowmaker, because there's only one tank, less barriers, she has free reign. A skilled Widow can really wreck an enemy team. With the new DPS passive, yes, another new DPS passive, where every elimination gives you a movement speed boost and a reload speed boost. So a character like Genji, who is a flanker, and Tracer as well, those characters can get elimination after elimination, and they have that movement speed buff to hunt anybody down. I mean, those characters are incredibly strong because of the DPS passive, while Roadhog and like Symmetra are weak because they don't really fit into the 5v5. You see where I'm going. There's a few outliers on either end of the spectrum that are either really, really good or really, really trash, and then everything else in between them is a pretty balanced state, which is good for the game. Again, this is minus the pro scene. But then when you get to the three new characters, Kiriko, Junker Queen, Sojourn. Junker Queen was overpowered for regular players to start. It wasn't bad, but she was overpowered. And the pros exploited it even further. And now she's nerfed to like a below average level tank. So she's not necessarily the greatest. She's not the worst, but not the greatest. As for Kiriko and Sojourn, both those characters are really, really good. Kiriko, to me, she's at near the top of the support in terms of power level. She's just really good at everything she does. She's not perfect, obviously. She's a high skill character. She does have a low healing output, so she does need, ideally speaking, a high healer output as her partner to make up for her, or at least AoE healing to make up for her single target healing. But overall, she's very, very strong. And Sojourn, she too is very strong. If you can click heads with your charged railgun, yeah, she's incredibly powerful as well. But those characters in particular, they were built specifically for 5v5. And as such, yeah, they are naturally going to be stronger because they're built for this style where everybody else had to get converted over. In saying that, what this does mean is that for future heroes and the battle pass, which I'll talk more about in monetization, essentially, yeah, It's kind of pay to win, kind of not. Again, I'll talk more about that in part 2. But safe to say that some of these newer characters, yeah, they're strong by default just because they're already built for 5v5. And in some cases, yes, they were overtuned to begin with on top of being built for this type of game. So future heroes, it's going to be interesting to see how Blizzard balances. But overall, in this current game, in this current build, as it is on launch, for everyday people, most people who are probably, I would say, at least diamond or below, the game is in very balanced state other than the few outliers that I mentioned. And it's fun to play. But this is game balance, and overall, the game balance is pretty good. This is part 1 of 3. The next part will be monetization, which I will go over more in depth with things like the Battle Pass grind, the in-game store, and as well as the controversial should heroes be in the Battle Pass. This is Veteran Gamer, and I look forward to seeing you guys in part 2 of my review of progress of Overwatch 2. Hope to see you guys next time.
Robot, we're going the other way.